How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt. That is Shawn. Welcome to our show. Shawn, in today's episode, we're going to be doing a little State of the Union, State of the Market address about the 2022 market. We're going to be talking about one major player that could have a big impact on the 2022 real estate market. And we're going to be talking about a little NFT blockchain action that's to our title company friends. Could be bad news, as this blockchain company is looking to completely reform the way that properties are sold and have them sell on the blockchain to save sellers and buyers lots of time, money, and hassle. Shawn, let us begin with the 2022 market. I'm reading a headline. It's anguish, it's pain, it's agony. Here's what it's like to shop for a home in today's tight housing market. A few numbers for you. Houses are selling an average 10 days faster than they were a year ago. This is nationwide. Listings from sellers were down 8%. And here's the big one. Active inventory down 28% from a year ago. What are you seeing from your buyers? What are you seeing from your sellers? And what sort of stories can you share with us?
Yeah, it is going to be a tough year if you're a buyer. We've already seen it happen, and we're in January. And, what I'll say is normally in January, inventory is a little tighter because most people don't want to sell in January. It's just a colder time. But if you're a seller out there right now, is actually a really good time because there's just nothing on the market. So it's like you kind of weigh yourself. It's like, all right, do I go on when there's nothing on the market, when, buyers are clamoring, or is it going to be better in the spring when there's more inventory but more buyers? Or will inventory even come, So that's what we're seeing right now. To give you an example, I wrote on a property last week, and I felt like the property was maybe a little bit underpriced, but it was a single family home in Arlington at that lower market of $850,000. We wrote a non-contingent offer, and believe me, guys, you have to be non-contingent. There's no other way around it. You have to be able to get rid of your finance contingency, your appraisal contingency, and be doing a home inspection prior, or just say, hey, the house is cool, I'm ready to buy it, right? Because if you're not non-contingent, you will lose every single time. And it depends on the listing. Maybe they overpriced it and you might have an opportunity there. But for the most part, you will have to be non-contingent.
How do you walk your buyer through so financing is one thing, appraisal, maybe get an appraisal waiver, but the home inspection, a lot of these houses, 1920s, 1940s, 1970s, they may have some issues. What sort of conversations are you having? Are you doing pre-inspections? Are you doing walk-in talks? Or are you just walking through with your buyer, checking for cracks? How does that conversation
Everything's going to be different, and it really depends on the buyer. This time we actually lucked out because there was a home inspector in the property at the time, and we listened a little bit while we were seeing it. And honestly, in going through the property and talking to the listing agent beforehand, finding out how old things are and getting kind of the warm and fuzzy from them to say, hey, all the major systems were replaced. The roof was replaced a few years ago. So that gives everybody the, okay, we're okay then. But normally I would suggest, and I always say this, get into the property in the first 2 days on the market and then make sure, hey, do I want to do a home inspection? And if you do, I would do a walk and talk because it's nice and quick. It's cheaper. You don't really need the report as long as you know what's going on. With a walk and talk, you're not going to get a full report. You're just going to get a quick thing with the inspector for about an hour, going through the ins and outs of the homes. And you can pretty much tell, if you want to move forward or not. So I suggest getting in there early and then scheduling that. With these particular buyers, we didn't have to, they felt comfortable. The house was very clean. A lot of updates to it. Anyways, there were 9 offers. And from what I understand, that thing went at least 6 digits above asking price.
100K at least.
Over $100,000 over.
100,000 above.
Yep.
And it might have been a little underpriced.
I feel like it was a little underpriced, maybe by 25K, but still,
right.
It's going $100,000 above that, So
are you even looking at comps at that point? Assuming if your buyer did want to buy, are you looking at comps and saying, yeah, it's going to go 75, $100,000 over, all the comps are below? Or are you just saying, hey, if you want it, this is the price that you got to get it at?
Yeah, I knew that market, so I didn't really have to look at comps, but I did anyways. And I'll look at 2 algorithms as well. So I always look at, 2 algorithms that I have access to that are pulling data. And
what are those?
So Remine. I'll always go on Remine because it'll show you a couple different things. And then I also go on HomeBot. So if you go onto my website and you type in your address, you can actually get a right now quote, which is pretty good. So I like to kind of use those 2 as some traction to get an idea, and then I'll look at the comps. But truthfully, comps don't mean anything anymore because they're giving you a basis, but people are just going nuts and they're going way above asking price. So how do you know where to go for that price? Yeah.
2 of the biggest factors right now are low inventory and increasing mortgage rates. Now, low inventory, I think I saw this from Glenn Sanford, who we'll talk about in a second. He said that low inventory doesn't necessarily mean less transactions. It just means that prices are going to increase quicker. Okay. With low inventory, prices are increasing quicker. Now, with the high interest rates, what we're seeing is that every time a buyer waits a week, their purchasing power essentially decreases. They get less for their money. So they're more motivated to buy right now, which is also fueling the bidding craze in Northern Virginia and in the DC area. So would it be, we're looking in a crystal ball, but would it be better for a buyer to hold off a little bit, wait for more properties to come on, as opposed to jumping into the market right now?
Yeah, there's so many factors that go into this because you think, all right, well, there's going to be a new comp next month at $900 and whatever $1,000 for that neighborhood. So now all the prices have jumped up there, and will they keep going? You've now set a new precedent. Also, your interest rates will be going up a little bit. And I did a little bit of an exercise on this on one of my mailers a couple weeks ago, where I was like, all right, will rising interest rates slow the market? And in my opinion, no. All it's going to do is cap that top end, right? So it's going to make people a little bit more reluctant on going 100,000 above. And the exercise that I did, I was like, all right, well, what if interest rates went up 100 or 1%? What would that do to their buying power? And basically, these buyers are going up $80,000, $85,000. So based on, interest rates now, certain property at like $650,000, I was like, all right, well, 1% is about $80,000. So, it's going to maybe slow those people down a little bit on their high end, on their top end. So we might start seeing that top end, edging down a little bit. But right now, it's making it explode. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the article from CNBC, which I will list and link below, has a similar example. Price of a home, $375, about the national median, says that the monthly payment is about $200 more than it would have been a year ago, and about $100 more than it would have been just 3 weeks ago. Average rate of a mortgage was below 3% last year and is now hovering around 3.7%.
Yeah.
Significant change.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'll give you a real world example of why payments go up. And that is because your taxes, your assessed values are going up, man. I got my new assessed value for Arlington. It's gone up and it's now no longer in. I used to talk about assessed values and how they were a percentage of your actual market value. I don't think so anymore. Arlington's going in at what they feel market value is for your house. And so
Arlington's been under market value for a really long time.
Well, they're hitting it hard now. And my payment's gone up hundreds of dollars a month because of taxes.
They're hitting Shawn Battle's pockets pretty hard.
Crazy. So yeah, I mean, the market's tough, man. It's going to be hard this whole year. It doesn't matter when you buy, it's going to be hard. And you got to think, all right, it doesn't matter if you buy early and you get in before the prices keep going up and before interest rates keep going up, right? So no one has a crystal ball. It's really tough to tell. I would say that if you look back at last year, you were better to buy at the beginning of the year than the end of the year, So keep that in mind.
We are 4 weeks into 2022, and already it's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
I saw another article on Inman dated like late December of last year, and it's like, here are the reasons why the 2022 market is going to slow down. It's like it hasn't happened yet.
No.
All right, speaking of Inman, let's move on to our next article. This comes to us via Inman. Glenn Sanford on the one player that could change the game in 2022. So Glenn Sanford EXP CEO sat down virtually with Brad Inman, leader of Inman.com, arguably two of the most, I'd say, influential and powerful leaders in the real estate space right now. EXP is growing rapidly. I don't know if you saw, but a significant team in Northern Virginia just joined EXP. Debbie Dogrill and Associates. Dogrill and Associates. I think they're the number 4 team in the area or something like that. They do like $350 million a year in transactions. Huge team. They've been around for 20 years. So EXP's making moves. And what Brad Inman asked the CEO of EXP, Glenn Sanford, is what could change, right? What could change the game to halt the market, to adjust the market, to change the market? And without a doubt, Glenn Sanford said that the number one player would be the Department of Justice that could change the way that real estate is conducted as we know it. We've talked about this before. If the Department of Justice comes out and says that sellers are no longer able to pay for the buyer broker commission, that could significantly impact the way business is done. Now, that would be a pretty drastic change, but it shouldn't really come as a surprise because we're seeing the breadcrumb trail almost leading up to some sort of federal mandate or federal law regarding sellers paying for the buyer broker commissions. So Shawn, I know how Shawn feels about this. I know how he reacts to it, but I want to take a different approach and talk about what would actually happen. So let's skip the emotions and let's jump to this reality of if this were to happen, if the Department of Justice or the feds were to come out and say that sellers are no longer able to pay the buyer broker commission, how would that impact the real estate market?
Real estate market as a whole, as far as buying and selling, I don't think it would cause the market to slow. What it will cause is kind of a bottleneck of, if they do that, they have to figure out a process on how buyer agents will be paid. And it can't be just like, okay, your buyer has to pay you now. They've got to set out a process, because this is like changing a whole system that we've been used to for, decades. So if that is the case, which is fine, if it goes that way, then we need a process. It can't be just, hey, sellers, you're no longer allowed to pay buyer agent commissions. Well, that's great, right? But you better tell us how to do it. And so if that happens, and if it's drastic and it's like, okay, here's the date, I'm sure they'll say, hey, by October of 2022, this is when it's going to occur. So now we've got to figure out how this is all going to break out.
Yeah, Sanford says that if something like that were to happen, it would be drawn out way past 2022. But this, I kind of look to these guys as for clues as to what's going to happen. I mean, he had EXP World, which is essentially a metaverse before metaverses were even a thing. So clearly he's like a few steps ahead of just your average real estate agent that's like putting up signs and balloons on like a Sunday open house and like baking cookies. So like the dude knows what he's talking about. And so I'm trying to not reverse engineer, but set the expectations of like this day is coming.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bubbling factors with the low inventory, with the surging prices, with inflation, with higher interest rates. And then you throw in buyers now having to pay for buyer broker commissions. I mean, I think that would flip the real estate industry on its head and significantly impact how purchases are made.
Yeah, I mean, it totally would, because how then do you get representation, right? You have to pay for it directly. So, hey, I know this market. I'm an experienced agent for 18 years. You now have to pay me upfront for my services, which, hey, it'd be a little easier on us. We're not having to go and not get paid, because what's happening right now as a buyer agent, when you're representing a buyer, you're writing a contract. You don't get it. You go show more properties. You write a contract, you don't get it, you go show more properties. So you're running and running and running. And there's people that I ran all year last year and they never bought. They end up pulling back. So if you can say, hey, but think about this, when do you pay them, right? Do you pay them up front? Because then the buyer is then paying a real estate agent up front to do the work, and they're losing over and over and over again. And then, how long is our contract? All right, it's a 6-month contract. And if you don't find something during that time frame, all right, now you got to go hire another agent and you got to pay it again, right? So that would be the upfront cost. The other way is to do it at settlement, which would, I think, be easier. You bake it into the closing cost somehow and just say, all right, this is what you're going to pay, and your closing costs just go up by that amount. So you've got to, come up with those funds at that point. So it's an interesting concept. I think it's going to happen, but you could see how it could run some buyers into the ground if they are paying that upfront commission. And I think that some buyer agents will demand that, because right now when the market's tough, we're running and we're not getting paid.
Yeah, and I think it'll be really enticing for those alternative brokerages that have a flat fee model or a heavily discounted model. And, consumer choice is going to come into play here, because you got to do your research. You got to look on Yelp. You got to look on Google reviews. You got to understand what you're getting for your money, because the word and the term full service literally doesn't mean anything anymore. And no real estate company should ever say that they're full service, because the real estate companies out there that provide bare bones service are saying that they do full service. So when you say you do full service, it completely diminishes your value proposition, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you.
No, my brain is
we're both fried today.
My brain is cloudy, dude. I'm still thinking about this Chase auto bill. I got a phone call from Chase saying that I owed like $400 on my car, and so they knew like my car model. They knew my car model.
Yeah.
And they knew the exact amount. And they said, you called before. So I'm not just some guy that hands over banking information over the phone.
But we've seen you get taken advantage of before.
Yeah, the NFT.
Yeah.
But like I'm gonna like be real. Like, I'm like 99% sure that it was a legitimate phone call.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I would like to be 100% sure.
Yeah. That'll take on your brain. One thing I did want to point out was that if it goes that route where you have to hire a buyer agent, you've got to look at, so there's going to be cheaper agents, right? There's going to be agents that are newer to the market that might say, hey, I'll do this for X, right? Or I'll do this for Y. But in this kind of market, you have to know what you're doing, right? If you're competing and you don't know how to get rid of contingencies or educate your buyer on getting them there, or using the right lenders on getting these non-contingent contracts, you're going to lose over and over and over again. So you're never going to, and then you're going to lose on the equity that you could have built over the year that you're losing. So be careful if it does go that way, and always research your agent before you hire them, right? That's what you should be doing.
The way I see it is like, all right, buying a house, really big event. Like, think about going to like an anniversary dinner with your significant other, right? It's like, you're going to go out, you're going to spend a couple $100. You want that to be like a 5-star service. So you go on Yelp, search by 5 stars. That's the restaurant you're going to. For a house where you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, would you go to a brokerage that has 3.5 stars on Yelp? And we're in an industry where everyone gets 5 stars.
Yeah.
Why would you go to a brokerage that has 3.5 stars?
And they're out there, and people use them.
No sense.
It doesn't.
Moving on.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into an NFT talk. I feel like we always reserve one story for NFTs.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is something that we talked about right when NFTs came out. We said, this is the way it's going to go, and it's starting to go.
Talking about it, but we didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is we have the ideas, but to implement those ideas is tough, and to do the NFT is, you got to do some research and know what you're talking about. So, anyways,
this article comes to us from TechCrunch.com. Propy launches NFT platform in the U.S., allowing real-world property to be bought as an NFT. So essentially, there is a company called Propy, fintech, if you will, and they've been in other countries like Ukraine and some other countries. They're in the U.S. now, and their whole thing is smart contracts and blockchains. So how can Propy disrupt the industry? They're going to do that by lessening the burden, the cost of the seller and the buyer by putting the real estate transaction on the blockchain via a smart contract. So once you verify your details, the process of transferring and selling and buying a property is much, much simpler, and there's no choke points. And they demonstrated this by selling an apartment in Kiev, in the Ukraine, completely online via an NFT, via blockchain. And so the CEO of Propy, Natalia Karian, I knew I was going to mess it up.
Whatever.
No, not whatever. Not whatever.
You can get this, Matt. Let's
Natalia Karianeva. Natalia Karianeva.
There you go.
Nailed it. Not whatever. Karianeva. No, I looked her up on LinkedIn. She's done a lot of good work in the financial space, in the real estate space. She's been CEO for a couple of years. And the Propy crypto coin has actually increased in value significantly this year and in the past month. So there is a lot of buzz over this company. And Shawn, I've looked into the company. I can't tell you the intricate details. I know what a smart contract is. I know what the blockchain is. What I don't know is the intricacies of title, deed, courthouse, recording. Virginia has 48 hours to do it. Why don't they just do it when they get the money? That whole process to me is terrible. It's like, I got to go to a Manassas title company and wait for a notary to come and stamp a few things. They don't know anything about the contract. They can't help. That to me is broken. So any company that wants to come and change that, like Propy, I am all ears.
Yeah, that system is completely antiquated. I mean, and I think this article, I think the way that they do this is they create an LLC or a company that owns the property. And then once you buy that NFT, you become the owner of the company which owns the property. That NFT basically owns the company that owns the property. That's how they make that thing simple. So how they're actually recording this in a deed or in the courts, I don't know. But that's the thing, is there has to be something to trump that and take it away and say, all right, this is the new way to do it. Because Matt and I talked about this a long time. The person that can come up with the title company that is completely blockchain is the winner. And there's no longer, think about all of the things that you are charged at settlement, which are, the fees to file, the deed in the courts and all this stuff. And not only that, it is title insurance. Title insurance is one of your biggest costs at settlement. And a lot of people are like, man, wasn't title insurance just bought on this property like 2 years ago? So why do I have to buy title insurance again? Yeah, you can get a reduced rate, but it's over and over and over and over again. To me, that is the one cost in real estate that is like, why?
What a
why
scam.
Are we doing this? Yeah. So if you can get rid of that, I'm sure like a lot of title companies would be angry because that's how they make their money. But it's like, that's where the money is and where blockchain will take out that money.
And I'm convinced that we don't need to know what the blockchain is or how the blockchain works. Hear me out on this. Like, we don't need to know the intricacies of how the blockchain works or how, maybe know how a smart contract works, but you don't need to know the code. Like, you don't need to know how the internet works. Right. You just we're going to get to a point where it's just there. It's going to get easier to use. Right now, we're kind of in that 1997 internet phase where it's like, okay, everyone's learning HTML to, have a cat dancing on the screen. But we're going to get to that point where no one is going to quiz you on how the blockchain is going to work. It's just going to work. It's going to be an easier process, and it's going to save a lot of people a lot of money. So I don't really care to know every single detail about Propy as a company. But what I do see is that they're finding a way to essentially electronically sell properties back and forth, buyers and sellers. And now they're in the US, and now I'm intrigued, and they have an NFT type of model. So I think they're definitely something to watch. And I mentioned the coin earlier. The one issue with I have with the company is I don't see the value in the coin. I don't see the value of the Propy. Like, okay, Bitcoin, Ethereum, these have intrinsic values and use cases. I don't know what the use case is for the Propy coin. Maybe I need to do more research, but if you can just go on the website of Propy and fill out your information as a buyer, seller, or real estate agent, conduct a transaction online that way. I don't know what the function of the coin is, or if there's a way that in the future it's going to become more available or more involved in the transaction itself.
I think that there's so many, so many coins out there right now, and they just keep popping up, and some are for some other things, but we know the major ones, and those major ones have to be accepted, in my opinion. Like, do you really want to have to transfer? Okay, let's take this one into this coin and then transfer this one into this coin so that we could get Propy. I mean, just make it simple. That's the barrier to entry is the problem. And so make it simple. All right. Everybody's using Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the top three. Exchange it to that, because those are the major ones that everybody's using. And then once you can figure out how that blockchain works, and you don't have to actually go to a courthouse and show that whole thing. I mean, it's going to be so simple, and the cost is going to be so much less. I'm sure they'll come up with some other insurance or some other kind of thing, right? But it would just be so much more streamlined, because right now, if you think about government agency and how much information is there and how much could go wrong in the process of human error, right? Like, that's where things go wrong. When you have a computer just blockchaining and, hey, the code is there, it's that much simpler. Now you have more access to be, what's the word? Right.
I mean, you see in the property tax records, you see sellers' names misspelled.
Yeah. All the time.
How does that happen, like, over and over again?
All the time. And not only that, one of the biggest things when title companies do a title search, one of the biggest things that is left open on that is an unreleased trust, an unreleased loan from the prior owner, right? So they have to go back and contact the lender and say, hey, you didn't release this lien that's on the property. You need to release this thing. And they'll just get a letter and say, yes, this was paid off. It's a payoff. So that comes up a lot. And for that to be actually happening is crazy. And so it should be a nice, clean transfer. And yeah, like I said, whoever can figure out that nice, clean transfer NFT style, it's a winning game right there.
Propy's leading the way. They've raised more than $16 million in VC, and they're backed by the likes of Tim Draper and Michael Arrington, who's big time in the venture capital arena. So very curious to see what happens with Propy. Title insurance is one of those things where when a buyer asks me, I reluctantly recommend it to him. I take a big sigh and I'm like, you should probably have it. It's probably going to be overpriced. You probably don't want to be without it, but it's probably a waste of money.
Yeah, I mean, just say quickly, there's two types of title insurance. There's owner's title insurance, which is not required, and there's lender's title insurance, which covers your loan amount, and it is required, and you have to purchase that. The owner's title insurance is not. I've bought it every single time. It covers you for your whole life. But for instance, like on an $850,000 house, you're probably looking at $3,500 or between $3,000 and $4,000 in insurance. It's a one-time fee. Half of it, or maybe a little more than half of it, is required. The other half is not. And it covers you for any title defects or things that they missed, right? And that's what I'm saying. It's like, how are you going to miss? You're doing a title search. How are you missing things? Oh, it wasn't recorded correctly or something. There you go. Error, right? So if you can get rid of that error, then we're streamlined on NFT property sales, and it's going to be big.
Shawn, why isn't the DOJ going after title companies?
I don't know.
$3,500 for insurance if they make a mistake? Come on now.
I know.
All right, guys, that just about does it for another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. Let us know what you think about Propy in the comment section below. Smart contracts coming to a real estate transaction near you very soon. And when I say very soon, maybe years from now.
Maybe 10 years, but we'll see.
We'll see what happens. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.